Hey guys, this is Lauren Zurchin. I am here to bring you an exclusive interview with Holly Black. When I was photographing Holly a few weeks ago for the calendar project, she agreed to sit down and talk about this, her newest book, The Coldest Girl in Coldtown. It's really awesome. My review's up above, but the interview talks about vampires, why she went that route, what her world is like, her writing process. It's a really great interview, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, so tell us about your new book, Coldest Girl in Coldtown.
The Coldest Girl in Coldtown is part road trip, part exploration of a decadent city, and part about a girl finding her inner monster and learning to love it. It's about, there's a girl named Tana, and she wakes up after a sundown party. This is a world in which there are vampires. There's been an outbreak of vampirism, if you will, and for the most part, the outbreak has been contained by quarantining certain areas and calling them cold towns. However, there are still some rogue vampires. Tana and a whole bunch of people, young kids, were partying in a locked house. She passed out in a bathtub and woke up to find that the rest of the party, save for one or two people, had been slaughtered. And so one of the people, her ex-boyfriend, Aiden, is infected, and there's a vampire there, the first vampire she's ever actually seen outside of television and YouTube videos. And so she decides that because there are other vampires, the vampires who actually slaughtered the people in the party, still now in the basement, that they need to get out of there and that she needs to help them. And so, hence the road trip begins.
Why vampires? What made you want to write about them now? Or are you a bit hesitant to do that and go that route at this point? And because they're all over the place, and they're very well known in YA culture right now.
I mean, I think about halfway through this book, I went to my friends and I said, "Guys, why did you let me do this?" But the thing is, and the reason I decided to do it in the first place, and the reason I'm really happy that I did write this book, is I loved vampires growing up. Let's see, my 8th grade research paper was on vampires. I once had a vintage costume vampire cape that I wore to school in 7th grade, which was also the year that I bought Interview with the Vampire for 25 cents at a garage sale and read it over and over every night, which led me to a ton of other vampire books. And in all the time that I have been a reader of vampire books, vampires have either been so big that you would be crazy to write another vampire book because the market is completely saturated, or so over that no one will ever write a vampire book ever again. And so I realized there's going to be no time when one of those things isn't true. So I might as well just go for it and write the book I want to write, and hopefully people will like it.
And you kind of have an interesting way of capitalizing on vampires in your book. You kind of created this whole world where it's kind of sensationalized a little bit. Talk about how you decided to go that route for adding some depth to the story with the vampire world.
Well, I mean, I thought a lot about what it would be like if we really had an outbreak of vampirism, and how we as a people would react to it. And I thought about the way that we really are fascinated with disaster. Mm-hmm. I mean, I will confess that I'm a big watcher of reality television, and one of the things that I found really interesting about reality television is the way that occasionally you see these glimpses of real reality peeking through in really weird ways. There was a show called Megan Wants a Millionaire, which was an offshoot of Rock of Love, which was an offshoot of Flavor of Love. And Megan Wants a Millionaire was canceled because one of the contestants allegedly murdered his girlfriend.
Oh.
In really real life.
Oh.
And we have these moments where we see through reality television to that really real stuff, and and then we have the unfiltered version on YouTube and in streaming videos. We see captured bits of people's lives, and the things that we are most attracted to are the disasters. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine told me that when they used to have rally car races, that people who were standing close to the rally cars would get hit and they would break legs and they would break limbs, and it was considered a badge of honor. You know, we are fascinated with things that are dangerous. Some of the most popular YouTube videos are the ones where people are falling down, where people are getting hurt, where people are being tasered, you know. And so I thought, if we had vampires, we would watch them and we would be fascinated. And you know, we like to get close to dangerous things, and we especially like to get close to watch other people get close to dangerous things and maybe not have the easy time we hoped we would have.
In general, in vampire books, if you get bitten, you're done. You turn. That's what happens if or they bleed you out or whatever. But if you get bitten, you have up to 88 days to let that virus work its way out of your system, and then you can become normal again.
Yep.
What made you want to give it out, in a sense? Like, this is like, if you can just hang in there, it's not like an absolute. It's almost like a ray of hope in a way.
Well, if you look at Dracula, for instance, there's this period in Dracula where he visits Mina and he visits Lucy, and he feeds them some of his blood, and they are in this liminal state. They're not vampires yet, but they are under his thrall, and the only way to break the hold he has on them is to kill Dracula, which is, you know, the reason they hie off and really have to chase Dracula down and kill him is really to save Mina. And so I do think we do have, you know, in vampire lore, we do have some precedent for the idea of the liminality of it. And I think it affords us sort of an interesting opportunity of of certain questions of, you know, is it better to be a vampire? Is it better to try and save yourself? What do you do in that case? The idea of having an option, even if it's very difficult to resist, you know, I think allows for seeing choice. And that, I think, was interesting. And I also thought that it made it, it made it seem more like an infection. And lastly, to slow it down a little bit, frankly, because if you bite people and they become vampires, then the outbreak is become so terrible that there's no point for me writing this book, because the whole world is just populated with vampires, and it happened like a week ago.
So we're really all about to just go drink some blood.
Right. So I mean, to some extent, like, you know, one of the things that you must do when you create a world is figure out how it actually could work. And, you know, unless you actually have some way for people not to become vampires, you wind up, you know, in a world overrun with them.
Well, let's kind of take what you just said and lead into a little offshoot here about writing in general. I mean, you say you're, you know, developing the worlds. How exactly do you create as a writer? You know, this is a broad question. We're going from very specific to...
What do you mean?
How do
I create?
Okay, well, so for example... You're talking about developing, but like, what's a typical day for you as a writer? What is your, you know, do you spend a lot of time outlining first? Do you like have a consistent work schedule that you're like, okay, I'm going to outline for this long, or, you know, just as, you know, what is working for you? Because you have quite a few books under your belt now, and
a lot of times I start with an image. I have some kind of image stuck in my head, or a character. You know, a lot of times an image and a character. And hope, like, what I do is try and chase the feeling I want the book to have. That often means outlining. It often means throwing away that outline after I made it, because as I write it, I realize it is veered off that feeling. And what I feel like I need to have is some thing that is the very core of the story that I can keep coming back to if things feel wrong, and check against it and say, okay, like when people cut hair, you know, they have the piece that everything else must sort of come back and check against. And for me, that's that image and the feeling it gives. You know, that's the thing that the book must do, and then I must keep checking the plot against. I think Stephen King said that he had this beautiful image of plot on writing, where it is that it is like being on on a dig, and that you have to unearth plot slowly, because if you take sort of the jackhammer of you know, an imposed story, and that you will shatter it. And you know, at the time I found that incredibly disheartening, because I was really struggling with plotting, But I realized that the reason I was struggling with plotting is because he's entirely right that one cannot always just come up with, one can't just come up with a story and then write it. One must again and again and again try and find what is the true story.